This is the Average Joe Strongman Show. Hey, everybody, we're back. I'm Lee, and this is my brother from another mother, Mike, and this is the Average Joe Strongman Show.
Good to be back. We kind of took an unplanned hiatus, so we apologize to our tens and tens of followers for the break. But life gets in the way sometimes. Right. But wanted to get back at it and have a really great episode. I think great conversation in store for tonight with a guy who has been in the game for more than a decade. He's competed at a local, regional, and national level, been to a few national championships, and kind of slowly and surely climbed up the ranks there at a national level. We're just chatting with him before we started recording here, and his all-time best overhead press is 375 on an axle, which I can only dream of with my wonky shoulder. I was psyched when I hit 300, but 375. And as we've talked about before, Lee, it used to be 300 was kind of the standard, right? Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? You were a man then, for sure.
Now it's 400. So this guy, got within striking distance. But, I think we're, again, going to have a really great chat with the founder of Official Strongman Games, Mr. Lynn Morehouse. Let's bring him in.
All right, here we go.
Awkward pause.
Of course.
We need a new engineer. There he is.
That's a very cool intro for my name's never looked so good.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, there you
go. So we'll get right to it because we got lots to talk about, Lynn. Can you talk to us about your background in organized sports growing up before you got into strongman?
This will actually not take much time at all. It was zero, really.
Really?
I was born and raised in Alaska, so and sort of fisherman family. So There was no summer league or any of that. The closest thing I ever did was indoor soccer in elementary school. So no football, no baseball, no basketball, nothing. And now living in North Carolina where college sports are king, I am definitely the oddball. But I think that's what kind of drew me to strongman is, I may not have played team sports, but I had an older brother, so I definitely was competitive on strength.
I think we all know how that goes with siblings for sure.
Oh, yeah. The younger always is trying to get bigger and stronger than the older.
Absolutely. Well, that carried through to your strongman career.
It really did. Absolutely.
I think Lee's trying to talk. I don't know if I'm technically. So what got you into strongman in the first place? What got you involved in strongman?
It really was just finding out it existed beyond the heavyweights.
Yeah.
So I think I found out probably from Maroon Day Muscle back in 2005. Just a random thing because I found out that after watching Jesse Maroon Day on TV, that him and I lived at for a period of time 30 minutes apart, and we actually had met on a fishing boat in Alaska, and so we had some great conversations, and I didn't realize there was this amateur scene. And so my first contest, I competed in 2006 at a contest in Virginia, the River City Strongman. I think it was River City Strongman 3. And it was inside a bar and had 25 athletes. I mean, it was a great time and kind of got me hooked, to be honest.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have similar stories of that first one, where you just kind of fall in love with all of it, right? I mean, kind of the freak show nature of it. It's definitely a fringe sport. but also just, getting into that community, the camaraderie, the brotherhood of, the men and women who do this crazy stuff.
Oh yeah.
What would you say you like most about the sport, Lynn?
Sorry, I was talking.
That's okay. What would you say you like the most about the sport?
It really was, it was the people, first and foremost, that I ended up meeting. And then what I enjoyed was that this is something that I felt I could do without actually having a huge negative, because I didn't start as a kid. I think that there are some sports, like weightlifting, for example. Gosh, if you don't really build up those motor patterns and mobility early, because, even though I feel like it's been ages ago since my first contest, I still was older than like the current world's strongest man now, my first contest. So, I like the fact that I could really just go in my yard, pick up something heavy and feel like I was training for something. And it didn't need to be more complex than that.
Yeah, no, it's pick this up, lift this thing, carry this thing. Yeah, it is. It's pretty much, it's pretty basic. But I think you bring up an interesting point just in terms of, I think there are a lot of people that come into strongman from, whether it's powerlifting, football, other sports, right? A large portion. But there are plenty of people who I know, and I'm sure you do too, who didn't have that background or organized sports, and they just, again, kind of found their way into strongman without really having any real preparation, right? So that's kind of cool that I always say strongman is for everyone. I'm sorry, strongman is for anyone, but it's not for everyone, right? I mean, anybody can do it, but you either love it or you hate it. Some people just like, whoa, this is too insane, too heavy, too crazy. But I mean, anybody can have access to it. So that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I've told so many people the first time you do, tackied Atlas stones, that generally at least 50% of people, they're hooked at that moment. And we never allow them to use sleeves or tape that first day. You got to do it. You have to have the bruising.
Get some stone kisses, maybe do it on, rip some hair off. A little Steve Carell style, 40-year-old virgin.
Yeah. I think
Lee,
you're replace that reference with Nikolai Myers from 2021. He did an imitation on the Atlas Stone run that was pretty darn close.
Did he scream Kelly Clarkson?
He did scream. I don't know what it was, but he was missing a lot of hair.
Yeah. Awesome. You're up, Lee.
All right. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good. Sorry.
Number four.
So, Lynn, how long have you been, how many years have you been promoting official strongman games now? I think you started
2017 was the first strongman games. 2013 was the first contest I ever promoted.
Okay. Yeah. So going on 5 years now in 2022. What got you started? Like what inspired you to create official strongman games? Where'd it come from?
Well, I can't take 100% of the credit. It ended up being just a great conversation and kind of a merging of ideas between myself and the Giants Live team. They had in the past done Masters World's Strongest Man, and they had done World's Strongest Woman, but they really hadn't extended this to the weight classes. And my feeling was I wanted to bring that World's Strongest Man experience to the weight classes. Cool. And so I was sort of leaning in that angle. And then they mentioned that, hey, we actually have the rights to those titles. We just haven't done anything with them. And, I was being pretty blatant where I'm like, honestly, I'm trying to replicate the CrossFit games because, it's got this thing where athletes from all over the world have qualifying routes to a world championship that, had really blown up. And, when I think about how, you would want strongman as a sport to grow, that's not a bad template to follow.
Absolutely.
So that's where the name sort of arose from that, where it's the strongman games. And then we just connected the dots with the official Strongman already being sort of the live stream provider, plus doing some weight class events over in the UK, that it became the official Strongman Games. And I'll be honest, I didn't even plan for OSG to be such a good acronym. Whereas, I laugh about it because, World's Ultimate Strongman, they did not think it through.
Yeah, for sure.
Where we really just got lucky because, it rolls off the tongue, not planned at all, but I'm super thrilled.
Good for you, man. It's a happy accident, right? Love that stuff.
For sure. Yeah, everybody, when you say OSG, they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like I rarely hear anybody say official Strongman Games. It's always OSG, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, what a happy accident. It works out really well because you want something that rolls off the tongue. And with everything out there, to be able to have, 3 letters immediately pinpoint to one specific thing, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
for sure. And, I guess kind of steering into my next question, Lynn, like I was saying before we got on the show today, I was there in 2017 watching, 2 of our teammates compete. What a monumental achievement that was for your first year. I was just blown away when I got there at the professionalism and the presentation of the show. But to kind of spin off of that, so from 2017 to last year, in 2017, how many athletes competed in that first year, and then how many competed last year?
So in the first year, I think we had a little bit of a boost from it being brand new. It's kind of a novel thing. So we had 9 divisions, and we were trying for 30 athletes per. Mm-hmm. So advertised, at 270. I think day of we were closer to 250, 255. But pretty amazing, especially with some of the talent, because we literally had in that first year, I can say safely that we had the best in the world across pretty much every division showing up, because it's kind of a new thing.
That's awesome. Right out of the gate.
Yeah. This year, we ended up with more athletes. It was closer to 300. Now, in part because we added 2 more divisions. So now we've got equality between the men and the women on the weight classes. So there's 3 different weight classes for each. Mm-hmm. And then we've also added the 50 plus for the first time. And
yes, for the old guys. Love it.
I'm probably just biased. I'm giving myself something to train for.
That's right.
Yeah. That's okay, man. That's okay.
But the reality was that, you've got athletes like Nick Best, like Mark Felix in their 50s kicking it. And then there were a number of athletes that first year that were already 50 or about to be. And the 40 plus is really becoming kind of like it's World's Strongest Man from 2010. These are top level athletes.
Yep.
And
look at the podium this year, right? You had Z, McClellan, and Pritchett, right?
Yes, and you just go down the line, and all of a sudden there's athletes like Nick Best, Mark Felix, Dimitar Sabatna. It's like I've seen these names before elsewhere. Right. So the reality is that Masters, once you got to maybe 45, these guys who are hitting 40, Brian Shaw's 40.
Yeah.
This is not like a typical Masters nowadays. And I think that's a testament to Strongman as a sport being fairly functional and something that you can do for the long run. So I felt like 50 plus was needed out there. And probably a little selfishly, just to give myself and others a reason to keep going, because I plan on still competing and training for another 20 years.
Yeah, good for you. As long as you're able to, right?
Exactly. No, Mike and I have talked about this at length several times. Looking at the quality and the grade of guys that are graduating that were super heavyweights 2 years ago, right? And now they're graduating into the Masters class. And these guys are just absolute animals. And like I said, Mike and I have talked about this at nauseum about, the 50 plus class. Now for the guys like us that, I started as a Masters. I started when I was 43. So now I'm 54. And as much as I love the sport, as you get older, I'm not as fast as I used to be. I'm not as, efficient as I used to be. To have that 50+ class that allows us to get back into that caliber of guys where I'm working with guys that are my age again, it really makes a big difference. So
you're still just as pretty though, Lee.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, you can't have it all, but at least I kept that. But
it's not about, okay, now you have a chance to win. It's really about health and injury prevention, because with athletes that are coming in, Jerry Pritchett and Big Z and all of them, it would be a disservice to reduce the weights, knowing that level of competition is there. But at the same token, once you get 50 and above, you're really putting your body on the line for some of those weights, because those are still very competitive weights.
Right.
You look at the weights in the Masters at OSG, and they're heavier than some of the world's strongest men less than 10 years ago.
Sure.
So I think that it's not just about having the chance or the opportunity to win. It's the opportunity to still play without risking your health.
Well, we joke about it's a war of attrition, right? Who can stay healthiest the longest?
That's right. That's right.
And maybe you got to take a year off or two because of injury, but you're still able to come back and you've got that opportunity, like you said, Lynn. So that's awesome. Yeah. Back to the growth point, though. You talked about the number of athletes. What about as far as international representation? Do you have more countries now? Like, how many countries were represented in 2017 versus this last year?
2017, like I said, we did fairly well, but I think it was 20 or 22 countries back then. And this past year, we were well over 30. And people coming out of the woodwork. So, in 2017, it was novel. It was new. It had that going for it. In 2021, it is, I would say, recognized internationally as the world title. And we're starting to get athletes from Ultimate Strongman, from Strongman Champions League, from other countries wanting to get involved. Mm-hmm. And it continues to grow, where now, I don't think we'll see less than 30 countries. And the bigger metric was, I think we were getting really close to 50% outside of the United States athletes competing in the United States.
Right?
Absolutely. That's the goal, right? Every country has the opportunity to participate, and we're really seeing that growth.
I remember being a kid and thinking about, why is the World Series of baseball the World Series? Because there's nobody else from, the UK or Japan or other, countries. It's all, US, it's Major League Baseball, right?
Right.
So not the same case here. So, hey, we're going to take a quick 2-minute break, run through some upcoming shows, help some of our friends out who are promoting, and then we'll come right back with Lynn. So sit tight.
Okay, we'll be back 2 minutes. And we're back.
So, hey, Lynn, you are not able to. Sorry, lost myself. Athletes are not able to just sign up for OSG, right? You can't just go and apply. You can't just register. If someone's interested in competing, you've got a few different paths of entry, right? The online qualifier, the regional events, and then invitations, right?
Yeah. So, the method of getting athletes and the right athletes to the event continues to evolve as other countries are brought on board and whatnot. And so we've started introducing the other countries their strongest title. Recently we've got South Africa. We've got any country that comes on board. We try to pair with their already existing title, and countries that are more established with the sport, it's a little bit harder. For example, in the UK, they have UK, they have England's, they have Wales, they have Britain's. They sometimes even have the exact same name contest, just run by different people. So, we try to have a path for international competitions to directly qualify, and we work with those promoters. And in the United States, just this year, we've created a regional system with 3 contests, kind of spread apart in the United States, just to be a little bit closer for people. And that gives them an opportunity. But we still do have the online qualifier that really allows anyone in the world. We try to make the qualifying event something that anyone can do. You don't need a specialty gym. We do not want to miss out on the strongest man or woman just because they don't train where strongman's popular. Invites still do happen as we've grown. As I mentioned, with Strongman Champions League, Ultimate Strongman, these other federations, other countries, sometimes we end up finding out, this person has been the strongest in their country. We haven't spoken with the promoter yet, but let's go ahead and get them so that they can represent their country. And then let's discuss with the promoter how we can make this a qualifying path in the future. So invites do happen. It's not off of your Instagram followers. It's off of, what you are actually bringing as far as being the strongest in your region. And, that does sometimes extend to America's strongest man and woman. That's not a formal relationship that we have, but certainly something I respect. I try to push all American athletes to use the online qualifier and the regional system, because there are so many competing national titles that it can be kind of hard just to choose one. So it makes it easier for me if they just use one of the other routes. But you can't just sign up. This is not necessarily a pay to play in that regard. You got to earn it.
Yeah, for sure. So, Lynn, tell us a little bit more about how the online qualifier works, even for my benefit, because I'm getting ready to do it here in a couple weeks anyway. So, can you give us a little more detail on how that works?
Yeah, so the online qualifier was really just designed as something so that we can find, someone that maybe isn't, in an area that has a large strongman presence. So they would go to officialstrongman.com, make an account, which, they can cancel anytime. There is a charge for it, a monthly fee, but you only need to do it for that 1 month. And then you make a profile, and you'll have 3 different tests that we have for the qualifier. Those 3 events change every single year, but we try to make them pretty darn easy to do. A lot of these people that are doing this are training by themselves, or they're training in their garage, or, they don't have every piece of equipment. And so we almost always have an overhead test, a deadlift test, and then a moving or a loading. Now, they will submit their videos directly onto the website. And then at the very end of the time period, I personally review all the videos. And, hopefully people did it right. If they don't, that's a bummer. But I will go and check. So in that spirit, I try not to make the event something that is going to cause a lot of hiccups. For example, people give me hell all the time about touch and go deadlifts. Well, there was one year where we said no touch and go. And literally, I had to make a rule that your arms had to bend at the bottom to show that it wasn't touch and go, because it was for reps. So going fast. But how do you say what's touch and go and what's not without like a judge saying an up command?
Right.
So using the arm bend, because you can't do touch and go if you're bending your arm. Well, in the end, people just kind of pushed hard on it. They're still able to get
sure. Cheater's gonna cheat.
That's right.
That was one of those where it's like, you know what? I don't think that actually changed the results for the strongest people being found.
Yeah.
So it made it easier because I don't want to say no to an athlete who I believe is strong enough to be there because of technicality. So I allow touch and go for that exact reason.
Yeah.
For example, like the overhead press this year is going to be a max out of a rack. Well, I also say it doesn't have to be out of a rack, and it can be off blocks. It can basically be, a max overhead press, from rack position.
Right.
It just can't be from behind the neck. And the only reason for that is like behind the neck's a cool feat of strength. They're going to get some big weights, but we only have 3 events to really find the strongest people in the world to qualify them. And I don't necessarily know whether the behind the neck is going to deliver me the strongest person as well as from the front rack for the purpose of inviting to Worlds. If this was just to have the biggest number, absolutely. And it's a great test. But I do have to realize that I want events that will identify athletes that will do well at OSG. So I need to keep that in mind. And then you'll notice like the sandbag or stone to shoulder. That's another example where sandbag to shoulder really is the primary, but recognizing that not everyone is allowed to modify the sandbags that they have access to train on. Anyone can go find a rock because it can be a natural form. It can be anything. I personally believe, and I'm going to test this theory, that using like a Cerberus strength sandbag filled with steel shot.
I saw you post that, man. I was like, you're an evil genius.
I think it's going to be easier, and I'm going to be testing that theory. I think I'm going to start with the 175, so the 80 kilogram bag, and load it to 350 or 375.
Still going to be heavy as hell, yeah.
But that's just an example of where we try to make it something that anyone can do. There's been plenty of people that say, do a yoke, but the reality is I need to weigh the yoke. Not everyone has access to something that can weigh a yoke. I mean, even the sandbag, I'm getting feedback that, hey, bathroom scale's kind of hard to weigh a sandbag sometimes. So there's a lot of factors for the online qualifier. They're a challenge. And so you'll notice that the events might not be quite as strongman-y as we'd like. But
you're limited though by the medium and what you're trying to achieve. So
correct. The intent is to find someone who might not have, a strongman gym specifically for that. And so far that's worked out really well. I mean, I love speaking with Trey Mitchell because he was the first example of someone who came in through the online qualifier, podiumed at OSG, got his invite to Giants Live, went to Worlds, got to finals. I mean, that is exactly the path that we kind of drew out, and it worked. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
Has the online qualifier evolved at all or changed over the years, or has it pretty much stayed the same, Lynn?
This year, we've cut it down from top 20 to top 10. I think we've recognized that there's value in inviting countries' strongest champions anyway, because those athletes want to earn that title anyway, so they're going to be doing that. Asking them to prove it again, yes, they will do it, but it's somewhat unnecessary. And then also in some of the other divisions, frankly, top 20 on some of the more obscure lightweight ladies kind of divisions, you may only have like 25 entrants. And so we were getting some athletes that I think were perhaps underprepared. for the official Strongman games, where top 10 will be more appropriate in that case. However, men's masters, as an example, and men's open, it is hard to crack that top 20.
Yeah.
That first year, you could crack top 20 if you were pretty good masters.
Yep.
Now you got to almost train for this like you would for a national championship to crack that top 20.
Yeah.
And for it now to be top 10, I tell athletes that, just tell me, well, I'm going to do the online qualifier. I'm like, just be prepared, because so is the rest of the world. And
right.
There's some monsters appearing out of the woodwork in federations we've never even heard of.
Well, that's the thing too. I think people got to understand, it's not just the U.S., right? You're going top 10 masters for the world. Right?
Yeah. To have the confidence that you're saying, okay, I'll be top 10 in the world in my weight, division without training for it.
Right. Good luck.
You better already be your country's strongest.
Yeah.
You're going to get surprised out there.
What about in terms of the numbers? Are you able to share kind of the growth of the online qualifier from 2017 to now, what you've seen?
Yeah, it's been slow but steady. I think there's still the challenge of the fact that it's behind a paywall. I mean, the reality is, and it's a funny thing. I think that like for CrossFit games, the CrossFit Open, for example, shoot, I've done that. When you're a part of a gym, it's very easy to get 10, 20 people within your gym just to go and do this thing to see where you stand. I think that having the paywall behind a membership feels different than a one-time expense. Yeah. And I don't think we've been able to really get it where it's become let's just see where we stack or where we rank, which would really be where I want it to be. I want it to be not just for people trying to make the top 10 or top 20. I want it to be, I want to see where I'm at. And that hasn't happened yet. So we're talking the difference between, say 200 people, making a go for it in the beginning to now maybe 300, 400. It's been steady. But at the same time, we've also been adding additional invites elsewhere. If we had made the online qualifier the only way to get there, numbers would have grown faster. Yeah. But I also think that we would be missing out on some of the strongest men and women. Yeah. Because, in some ways, they don't feel like they should have to say it again. They're already their state's champion, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when people aren't afraid to post their numbers. More of just a fun ranking, as opposed to, I don't want others to see, because I see some of that today where, I'd say almost a third of all the videos get submitted the last 24 hours. I don't know why people are either gaming the system or trying to, hide their numbers. If you're the strongest one, you're going to show up. There's reason to game it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of that tiers into, some people may think it's strategy. I know that, like I was telling you, Lynn, when I two people from my team that did the 2017, and it was a matter of once the qualifier opened and they started actually physically starting to record videos, like, man, I know I can do better than that, right? So they may take 2 or 3 attempts at trying to get their best set of, numbers before they post it. But I'll be riding that train here very shortly. So.
And the reality is you can replace your video. So you can post at July 1st and then post at the end of July if you want. I think people are, they're trying to, show up and be, the surprise person where I'm always more impressed with the person who has the video up at the beginning and says, can anyone take me down? That's always more impressive to me.
Yeah.
Actually, that's interesting you said that. I didn't know that. So whoever enters the online qualifier can submit multiple times, or they only submit once?
They can replace their video and change the score as you get a better lift. Absolutely.
Wow, good to know.
And sometimes, unfortunately, the website gets bogged down in that last 24 hours.
Yeah, because everybody's loading their stuff, sure.
I get a lot of really late night, depending on what time zone, people trying to go and do uploads and freaking out. And I was like, guys, you've had this opportunity. There is a cutoff.
Yeah, for sure. So switching gears just a little bit, Lynn. So how does the regional qualifiers, how do those work?
The U.S. regional ones aren't that complex. Really, what we've done is, we've spoken with some strongman promoters in different parts of the country. So we've got Derek from Battle Axe Barbell in Texas, and then Ryan and his team at Dungeon Strength in the Pacific Northwest in Washington. And then I'm going to kind of represent, since I'm sort of in the middle on the east, so Mid-Atlantic. Number of competitions may end up changing over the years, but really that became, we wanted a standard where, one, every division that we are qualifying for would be represented. So 73 kilogram, 50 plus masters, everyone has that same opportunity. And then also a certain level of standard. And one of the things that athletes will go and see is, SBD has come on board as the title sponsor for not just OSG, but regionals. And they're specifically pushing for that live stream. So we're trying to keep the production quality very high. Obviously, with different promoters, different equipment, there will be differences, but we're trying to sort of set a standard of what a regional competition could look like for this first year and see where it goes. Right now, with only 3 competitions, it's still a bit of a travel for people, where I think down the road, I'd have more competitions with maybe fewer invites. But we're really going to see what the feedback is from the athletes as we do it. I mentioned earlier, the U.S. has a lot of different titles that you could say are the appropriate people to be choosing. There's the Arnold champion. There's the national champion for 2 different federations. There's for women, strongest woman in the world versus America's strongest woman. There's so much. That it really became kind of a challenge. It's like, okay, and where would I invite the 73 kilogram woman champion, and where would I get the 50 plus? So it made sense for us to say, you know what, for this year, we're going to just do it ourselves and see what the reception is like and evolve it as it needs to be. But we recognize that the United States is a large enough region and sort of a mature enough area for strongman that we needed some additional methods of earning an invite.
Cool.
Gotcha. Are there any regional qualifiers abroad, like overseas?
Yeah, I mean, you've had Kiki on your show twice now. She is a qualifier. We try to seek out the best promoters in each country. Sometimes they have the country's strongest title. Sometimes they don't. And we've got that relationship probably now with well over a dozen promoters in different countries.
That's awesome.
What about now? You mentioned the invites earlier and kind of sort of looking at, different, the strongest people in different countries and reaching out to them. How does that work again? Just one more time.
Yeah, I mean, I think about what was the gentleman, Pablo, it's, from the Ukraine as an example, was one of those where it's like, all right, first of all, we didn't have a heavyweight from the Ukraine competing, and his pedigree or resume, if you will, he had just won Ukraine's strongest man and beat Novikov.
Wow.
I think that was enough that I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And he goes and wins it, and then goes and gets like 4th place at Europe's, and then does really well at Worlds. So at a certain point, a strong resume can get you an invite. I would say those are going to be rarer and rarer as it becomes more and more known. Now I'm working with, Ukraine to get, the best in every division, not just these one-offs, there. So you identify a different athlete, we've got his handle is the Dutch Destroyer. And it's like, what a great athlete and such a strong guy representing another country. and you bring someone over and you get to be able to talk with them in person, and then you build a relationship, and hopefully that country is represented year after year afterwards. And if they get top 10, well, they don't have to get an invite in the future.
Yeah.
But if they don't get top 10, now they at least know the process, and I can get them to either get their country strongest on board as a qualifier or to do the online qualifier itself.
Cool. Awesome.
Good stuff. So what's the Lynn, what's the drop-off rate from year to year? I know you get a few people who have to opt out due to injury. Is that something that seems to be pretty consistent?
Well, yes. And I would say 2021 was probably a little bit more of a challenge, because even though I worked with national interest exemption to be able to get the international athletes over here, there's still some countries like Australia, just a clean sweep basically of no, they can't travel. So you have to realize there's going to be a drop off on that side. There's others that say, yes, I know I can, but I don't feel comfortable. But even before pandemic woes and things like that, the more competitive, higher profile, heavier weight competition you do, the larger percentage of people will get injured prepping for the contest. I almost wish I could get people to train a little bit less, but as they're leading up to a world championship, it's not just training hard. It's the intensity, the weight, the frequency, everything goes up. And it's broken my heart to hear so many athletes that have injured themselves really in that peak month right before the contest. And it can be as much as 10% of the entire invited base will go and get injured or have to drop out for some reason. And I don't think that's going to change. Unfortunately, with the higher level contests, people are going to push themselves to the limits, because you're going for that title. You're going for the exposure that doing well at OSG gets. I tell people, there's prize money, but prize money isn't what actually makes a lot of athletes be able to be professional athletes doing this full time and quit their job. It's all the sponsorships and additional exposure that comes. Speaking with other sports that have more professional athletes than we do, they don't earn their living off of winnings.
Right. That's sure.
Where they make all their money, but exposure is. And I'm really excited when sponsors like SBD come on board. Cerberus is a good example where, frankly, I believe a lot of their ambassador athlete sponsoring programs, they look at OSG as okay, where do you really fit? Because it starts to become a true standard measurement.
There's that level of prestige associated with being a competitor.
Yeah. So even if you're not necessarily going for the win, top 10 is now almost a separate achievement, because you get a whole nother day of competition. The focus is much more on you because it's only head to head. So there's a lot more video time, and you don't have to qualify the next year. It's like, thank God I made it.
Now I assume you do, but I want to ask, do you factor in that drop off rate when you kind of determine how many athletes you want to have compete and how many you invite? And
the reality is I don't do a hard cutoff. We have never had the full 30 athletes in a single women's division yet. So that's a good example of where there's still room to grow there. 2021 though, I think we had almost 40 in the men's masters, and
it was a big group.
It was a huge group, really, really talented. And the reality is, I think some people just wanted to be saying that they competed against Big Z, Pritchett. I mean, you had, I think, 8 athletes that had competed at World's Strongest Man in that division. Just saying that you were in that same realm was reason enough to try very hard to qualify. And I don't see that changing. So right now, the men's masters, men's open still tend to be the largest divisions, but all of the men's weight class divisions are growing, and some of them are at that 30 athlete mark or about. So I don't put a hard cap on it. I definitely don't want to see this grow to 600 athletes, USS Nationals kind of realm.
Yeah.
More just because it reduces the value to the athlete on the exposure side. It starts to end up becoming a little bit. I mean, it's already really hard with 3 athletes over 3 days. So, I do keep that in mind. That's why the online qualifier is top 10 instead of top 20, because we knew that some of the athletes that had COVID-related reasons for not being able to come, I have extended their invites because, frankly, I think that that's the right thing to do. I also generally have a philosophy of, if you had an invite and then you had an injury stop you, if you're doing well and you're training and can talk to me and say you're still going to be a top level athlete, I will generally extend that invite because it's the right thing to do. You need to focus on, taking care of your bicep and focusing on your recovery, not doing an online qualifier with a, sandbagged shoulder when you just had an injury, I try to be reasonable, but no, I don't do a hard cutoff. I think people almost want me to, but I want the best people to be there. If that means that, I go to 31 athletes instead of 30, so be it. I'll make do on the production side.
Yeah, for sure.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
In the end, we cut to top 10 no matter what for finals. So that doesn't
right. That's right. The ultimate goal.
Yep.
So, Lynn, how do you decide on what events to include in OSG?
It's a tricky one. So, you had mentioned that you saw 2017, and I go and say that OSG has really evolved since then. And one of the biggest changes was doing everything one division at a time, meaning you're going head to head with athletes in your division, and there's no other noise going around. If you're a spectator, everyone's doing the same thing. This person's faster than this person, and you don't need to know any other information. And in 2017, we were able to do some really cool events. We could do car deadlift because we did a different vehicle for each different division. I know Kiki talked crap about my truck pull, but part of that was, being able to have a competitive truck pull that can increment up from the 64 kilogram ladies all the way up to, the men's open. And so we actually used the big F450 towing a 40-foot trailer and ended up with 3 vehicles added onto that trailer by the time we were going heavy. So it was massive, but I agree with her, and she's an unfair example because she holds a world record for that event.
That's right. That's right.
But it's always cool to have some airplane or monster truck. So choosing events for OSG is a little bit challenging because it does have to work for all the weight classes. A prime example is the car walk. I spent 2 years making that a possibility. I could have easily had a car walk for the men and a yoke for the women. And it wouldn't have been right. I'm still trying to bring the world's strongest man experience, to every single division and the women. And I was able to nail it. I'm so proud of how that turned out. And the reception's been amazing.
It looked badass. It was really cool.
It looked good enough that World's Strongest Man came calling and had me ship 2 of them to them. So, it's been tested in every single World's Strongest title now in less than 12 months. So that was a home run. But, for example, I need to choose a deadlift event. And everyone's asking me when am I going to announce the events? And it's a very challenging thing because I'm trying to source equipment. I'm trying to figure out ways to make it feasible. And a deadlift event is an example where I've done a similar event with the deadlift ladder for now a couple of years. It's time for something new. And everyone screams car deadlift. I challenge people to find me 4 identical vehicles for lightweight ladies and then 4 all the way up to heavyweight men, and then you probably need an in-between. It just becomes kind of a challenge there. Not saying it's impossible, but I don't think people recognize that that is a constraint that I have that World's Strongest Man just didn't have. They had one vehicle this year. And by the way, the vehicle wasn't even all that exciting, in my opinion. It was a normal vehicle. So, I try to look at what event will have that spectacle feel, but can scale appropriately and be fair across all the divisions. I do not want a situation where it's like, oh, well, they got this, but we're stuck.
Right.
So it is a real challenge. But, as any promoter, you do a formula. You're like, okay, I've got to test overhead. I've got to test deadlift. Should I test loading, moving, grip? And I've got 6 events to work with right now to find the world's strongest.
Yeah.
6 may turn into 7 or 8 in the future. We'll find out. Yeah. But, I do my typical format where I try to figure that out. And then, of course, figuring out what it is for each weight is a lot of testing internally and a lot of private conversations with specific people that you can use to judge.
Yeah, right.
And so far, I've done fairly well. I would say the lightweight ladies get the brunt of it because they're the first division that goes out there. Sometimes things are a little bit heavy or a little bit light, and I can actually make an adjustment on the fly to say, okay, you're not meant to have 15 to 20 reps on this. I've got my whole ratios wrong. Yeah. So I'll make an adjustment for the next division, and then I can kind of get it right. Log press, for example, this year, 175 for the 64 kilogram ladies was aggressive. There were athletes that did it, but it had a higher 0 rate than I would have liked. And I look at the analytics and I try to adjust the weights year over year to try to hone in on that sweet spot. I want zeros. Don't get me wrong. There is going to be zeros. But when I look at half the field, I have to ask myself, okay, did half the field not belong, or was I wrong on the event? And most of the time in a situation like that, I tend to believe that I was wrong, not that, every athlete is just below my crazy standard.
Well, please forgive my ignorance, but I want to ask: do you ever include the events from the online qualifier as part of the 6 events that you do at the games?
Never exactly the same, because remember, the online qualifier events are meant to be something you can do at home by yourself. And the OSG events, gosh, I want that to be a spectacle. I want, I want the large thing that you can not do this anywhere but at OSG kind of thing. Okay. Now, granted, I don't always succeed, but when I do, it's pretty awesome that people want to do that just for that photo op, if nothing else.
Yeah, right.
So I know you talked about it a little bit, Lynn, just a second ago, but I want to go back to it just real briefly about the weight matrix. I mean, what's your thought process to determining how heavy those weights should be for the events? I know you talked about, making adjustments on the fly, but overall, you've got to come up with a baseline from somewhere that says, okay, for each class, these are the weights that are going to be challenging enough for the top 30 athletes on the planet. So how does your mind spin around that?
The secret sauce.
The secret sauce.
So the reality is, like, for the men's open, right? I asked myself, the top 3 who win this should be able to do weights that are at a Giants Live. So if Giants Live is, for example, doing a 750 deadlift for reps, I better make sure that anyone who wins this event can do a deadlift for 750 for reps. Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that I choose 750, but it does mean that I think about it. Same for overhead. If all of a sudden, Giants Live has a max log and the very entry weight is 380, that tells me they better be able to do 380 if I'm really trying to qualify people to do well in that. So I need that appropriate test. So I've got Giants Live as a general marker. I don't go necessarily as heavy as Giants Live on every event. Some events, like the car walk, 1,000 pounds, identical, right? Technically, that was heavier than World's Strongest Man this year. But, that's one marker. I was an athlete for many years in the 105s. I still compete now in the Masters, but I use what I can do, knowing I'm a crap deadlifter, but I'm a decent overhead presser. So I can generally kind of figure out what 105s can do using that. I have great relationships with athletes at different weight classes that I can go and say, I know that this person is a top level athlete or a middle of the pack athlete. Where can I test some of these numbers? And then once you've got these key frames, I do try to keep it fairly uniform. So, 80 to 90 to 105 to open really is a progression. You won't see 80, 90, 105. I'm expecting that as you get heavier, you will be stronger. There are very few exceptions to that. I think like an 18-inch deadlift is the only one where it's like the 80-kilogram athlete that happens to be much shorter can end up having a higher deadlift than a men's open just because of that, physique difference.
Sure. Yeah.
But so same with the women. Once you have a couple of key frames, the 64 kilogram athlete here, you've got the open women here, and then enough people, you can start to make this progression where you can go, all right, we're going from 455 to 855. What are the appropriate increments? And then, of course, for my own, making it nice on me, I use 25s and 45s. I mean, strongmen don't use any other plates, right?
Right.
That's right.
Exactly. I work at a gym that has 15 and 35-pound bumpers, and it drives me up a wall. Look, they're abominations. There's no reason for those.
No reason for those. I don't mind the 15-pound bumpers. The high temp makes a great 15-pound bumper, and it's amazing. Yeah. I think I like it because as a progression up, 15, 15, 45, 15, 15, 45. I love it. Yeah. But yeah, I do the key frames, and I absolutely test it. I'm very rarely surprised. I mentioned adjusting things. I've only had to adjust things twice, and both of them were overhead, and both of them were because of the 64 kilogram ladies. And that's just an example where I probably know too many darn good 64 kilogram pressers. And so I'm being fed information by people who like press as much as I do. Yeah. But even then, the adjustment is very minor. Almost never do I change anything day of, and I've never had to change an actual event because I only announce events that I am 100% confident I will have the equipment there ready. And that's, knock on wood, I hope that continues because people are training for these things, and it's a real bummer when things change at the last minute. I know people say, hey, that's Strongman. And it is to a degree, but hey, this is a world championship and we should be better. Yeah. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Cool. Hey, when you look back on the last, 5+ years of OSG, could you ever have imagined the success that you've had? I mean, how does that make you feel?
It's pretty awesome. I could imagine a world like I made money from it, which would be nice one day, but I have those reflections where you see, an idol in the strongman community likes your post, or better yet, Facebook messages you and asks a question, things like that. I've been blown away by the support and people coming to me and saying hi. It really has changed my view of what success is for it. The concept originally would be, how do I put on the best production? And now it's really just, how can I make this the best experience for these people? And I have such strong images in my mind of these people because I built the relationships where, and initially I'm thinking, oh, for the world champion. Now I can actually put names and faces, and it's like, how can I make this the best weekend of the year every single year? How can I do that? Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
Hey, so last question, Lynn. Where do you see this, or where would you like to see official strongman games be in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years, I'd like it to be traveling internationally. That's for one.
That'd be awesome.
That's going to be an immense challenge because of the equipment side. And if I'm perfectly frank, I think that the international athletes take a little bit more pride representing their country. So they're willing to do that travel. Then
Sure.
My perception of if we went international tomorrow is that we would lose some athletes because from the United States because they are not either as proficient in getting sponsors to get on board to help them with their travel.
Yeah.
You know,
Point.
these international athletes, they're on the news. They're in
Sure.
newspapers for their country. It's a big deal. It's
Yeah.
a lot harder in the United States because we have other sports that have taken the spotlight.
Right.
For the American athletes to represent the United States abroad.
Mhm.
Right.
So I have to keep that in mind, but it is something I expect in 5 years that we will be able to switch venues. We will be able to have venues bid on the official strongman games, similar to World's Strongest Man, where some of the cost of running this competition ends up being a non-issue, and that will allow the athlete to not have to pay any money for entry fee or travel, and for the prize money to be reasonable. I never expect anyone to quit their job with the prize money, but
Right.
if exposure can get you a sponsorship that allows you to quit your job, that'd be awesome.
For sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to lose a top level athlete because they can't afford it. In 5 years, that'll never happen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, that sounds awesome, man. I wish you the best of luck. And you have the distinction of now being the guest on the longest episode of the Average Joe Strongman.
Yeah.
Just
I'm a
over an
talker.
hour.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, honestly, this is great
No,
stuff. And I think there are a lot of people who are going to be interested to hear, your thoughts on this, the history of it, and, where it's been, where it's going, how it works. Because I'm not as familiar as I should be. And, looking forward to being there at some point, somehow, some way, whether I'm competing, if I can get my broke ass, healed up to make it. But if not, maybe come down and watch and cheer on my brother from another mother here, Lee, and my other friends who make it in.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time. Really appreciate it, Lynn.
Hey, I've really enjoyed the conversation. Yeah, I'm definitely a talker, so I apologize for that. But
No, we had fully expected this one to be our longest one because this is some great content, and you're a household name in the strongman community. So we expected a lot of great information coming out of this one, which we absolutely got. So thanks again for joining us.
hey, no worries, anytime.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, see ya.
Until next time, everybody.